today I want to take a more simple approach because I think we're spinning and we're saying, well, I just don't understand the science and it's so confusing and I don't know who to listen to. Today, why don't we try and be reasonable? Why don't we just try and deal from a place of logic? That's what I'd like to do because I think inside of us, we really actually do know the truth. I think we are smart enough to understand what's going on here. And we're smart enough to say something doesn't add up. Why were you saying one thing a month ago and now you're saying this now? What has changed? What is the end goal? We are how many hundreds of days into the 15-day let's flatten the curve approach? What does it take to flatten the curve? How many millions of people have to bounce up and down on that curve for it to finally get flat? And then once it's flat, what does that mean? What does any of this mean? That's the question I was sort of asking myself as I watched the head of the CDC, Robert Redfield, deliver this really important statement about why we're all wearing masks. Take a look at this.
I'm not going to comment directly about the president, but I am going to comment as the CDC director that face masks, these face masks, are the most important, powerful public health tool we have. And I will continue to appeal for all Americans, all individuals in our country, to embrace these face coverings. I've said it, if we did it for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, we'd bring this pandemic under control. These actually, we have clear scientific evidence, they work, and they are our best defense. I might even go so far as to say that this face mask is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine.
I'm not sure if that statement is more of a statement of what they believe this COVID vaccine is going to be or the use of these masks. But this idea that this is the single greatest measure, and when you listen, when you think about, Robert Redfield, this is the head of the CDC. This is one of the world's greatest scientists. And when we think of how accurate science is, don't you feel good when he says, all we need to do is 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. Wow, that's amazing. The way you just nailed that down, I feel so good about it. How about the 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20? How many weeks have we been wearing these things? And then we're going to really nip this thing in the bud, huh? Why? What? What is the end game? Aren't you asking yourself, if we all wear this for another 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 weeks, what is on the end of that? What is the big prize? What's the blue light special we're all waiting for? None of these questions are being answered because they know that the virus doesn't go anywhere. It says, oh, that's it, we're out of here. You had me at 6 weeks, I was still hanging out. 8, we started sort of losing our crowd. 12 weeks, the virus just went home. Where did it go? It doesn't go anywhere. But perhaps the biggest question I really want to ask Robert Redfield. Now, I'll admit, you're right. I am just a journalist. I can only read studies, and we've read all the studies on this show. Maybe a couple more today we'll get into, but I can't find any really decent study that put masks on children that are touching it all the time, goobering and snotting and spitting and food and whatever's going on. I've never seen a study of how that somehow protects these kids, that it's not making them spread this thing more as they essentially wear a diaper that's collecting bacteria and things all over it. I don't see any studies like that, Mr. Robert Redfield. But again, I'm not the head of the CDC. But I do have one question. I have one question, Mr. Redfield, and it really goes like this. If this really is greater than any vaccine and the way we're going to really end this pandemic, then please, please explain this. Please. Now, I'm not condoning this. I actually just had this thought so that I could risk my life for you. These are the types of things we're going to do. But just in case you missed it, let me do this one more time. This is the mask, right? This is the mask he held up. Oh, you know what? Let's really tighten it down. You say, Dell, you're not wearing it right. Okay, I'm really going to get this as tight as I can get it, okay? Here we go. How, in any way, is that protecting my neighbor? Can you explain to me on the elevator how that's doing anything? These particles of this water vapor or whatever a vape actually is are larger, in fact, than the byrons that we're talking about when we talk about COVID-19. How is this mask doing anything? That was 2 breaths. I just filled an entire elevator just then. It doesn't matter, that 10 feet from the restaurant, I'm sorry, the 10 feet I was breathing through this is no different than what I'm breathing when I'm sitting in a booth somewhere. I'm tired of this. And as I've said before, I don't want masks to be the hill that I die on. I am much more concerned with a warp speed vaccine that could destroy civilization as we know it. But frankly, now that they're saying even when we have a vaccine, you're still going to have to wear the mask, I'm over it. I'm over walking through airports with this lie on my face. I believe this pandemic is mostly a lie. We've talked about the bloated numbers, but of all the lies, Mr. Redfield, this one. I just showed you there is no way this is doing anything at all. So please, can we cut the games, or can somebody allow me into a White House press conference so I can do what I just did? We need answers to these things. We need real science. And frankly, this is not logical.